941 days. If you haven't heard that number by now, then you're not tuned in. 941 days since Klay went down in Game 6 of the 2019 NBA Finals, obviously with an ACL tear, and then November 2020 goes down with an Achilles tear. You know, one of the most unique and challenging injury situations in my entire career covering pro sports, let alone the NBA. And it was a really, really interesting night. You know, I made the choice to make the drive. As you know, I've been complaining the last couple of years about how from my home base, getting to Chase Center is tougher than getting to Oracle. So but for Klay Day, it was worth the trip over the bridge and the parking snafus and all those types of things to see 18,000 plus, show support for this guy that, as we know, and as you guys have written so many times and captured, that the Bay loves him back. This dude is just cut different and wired in the kind of way that resonates with the people of that entire region. I know you've written about it and you've probably done, quite a few interviews today about it, but, just takeaways from the night, what's going to kind of resonate and stay with you.
Well, 941 days is the number that, as you said, gets referenced a bunch, but I think the big one's like he was just turned 29 when he hurt the ACL, and he's turning 32 next month. I mean, that part of his career, the fact that it's not just, he lost a few seasons, he lost 29 to 32, essentially. And, I think that hits
prime real estate.
Yeah. I mean, and you think about when he got injured. I mean, that was like a highlight moment in his career. He was like better than Kawhi Leonard in Game 6. Do you remember that game?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was like the story of the night.
Yeah. You're on the floor with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard.
No KD, because KD got hurt. But
Kevin's out. I'm sorry. Damn it. There goes my point. All right. Forget Kevin.
But generally that adds to like the whole, remember the only reason that game existed, the only reason he got hurt, if you want to go butterfly effect, is because after Durant did get hurt in Toronto, him and Steph Curry dragged them from that Game 5, like presumed lost. Remember, they hit 3 threes in the final 30 seconds when Toronto was like, remember Toronto was like celebrating the finals. Anyways, I went down a road I didn't mean to. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. And I was going to piggyback because the butterfly effect was on my mind last night for a different reason. And I wrote some of this, but I'll be honest, Slater, some nights at the office, you end up pumping your fist and saying, man, I killed it. And then others, you kind of go, oh boy, I left some money on the table. So I tried to go down memory lane a little bit regarding the what if scenario of 2014 when the Warriors decided not to trade Klay Thompson. And the part that kind of gets forgotten is that, that Draymond Green was part of those discussions as well. And the prospect of the Warriors losing Klay and Draymond in exchange for Kevin Love and Kevin Martin, who they didn't want, but would potentially be their starting shooting guard instead of Klay Thompson. It's a wild what if scenario to look back at because of obviously who Klay and Draymond became after that, what the Warriors accomplished. And so the theme that I tried to hit on was the idea that defense was the priority then. That's why they chose not to do it. Defense is a priority now, and it's a major part of their identity. But the butterfly effect stuff that I missed and that I should have kept diving down that rabbit hole is the idea that, the one and only Andrew Wiggins now is a major part of what this Warriors team is doing. And at that time, Andrew was, he headed to Minnesota because Flip Saunders, then running the T-Wolves, had ended up doing that Kevin Love deal with Cleveland instead of the one with the Warriors. So it's a hell of a thing to unpack all of that and think about how Wiggins is now expanding the Warriors window. Klay obviously stayed put. Draymond stayed put, became an incredible player. And Kevin Love's had a wonderful career, but because they happened to play the Cavs last night, pregame, Klay gets a lot of love from Kevin sideline right before he takes the floor, right before tip-off. Now, those guys, of course, grew up in Oregon together, played baseball together, are very close. And then even after the game, Kevin went and gave him a big hug and was obviously very happy to see him back. But, you talk about a butterfly effect. There's a lot there.
Yeah, in that Kevin Love going to the Cavaliers for Andrew Wiggins triggered the rivalry, the Warriors-Cavaliers rivalry that defined the era. There's so much because that's what happens when you become the team of an era, essentially.
So, John, we were sharing with the listeners just how Slater and I were obviously there late last night, watching Klay get hugs from Kevin Love would send you down memory lane because there was the whole what if scenario with Minnesota back in 2014. There's so many layers to this thing, but we were there trying to do our thing. I'm assuming you were watching from home. What sort of perspective and takeaways did you have watching this guy who hadn't played ball in 941 days on a NBA floor?
Honestly, I was watching the Wisconsin-Maryland game so I could write about Johnny Davis this morning.
Damn it, John.
I'm not even kidding.
Damn it.
Have you seen any of the highlights?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Oh, so the most amazing thing to me on that dunk was not the fact that he dunked, but the fact that he dribbled 4 times before he did it.
Right? I mentioned this to Marcus on our post-game podcast last night. He dribbled so much last night. There was one possession he had 10 dribbles on. He was like wandering in his drives. He was doing like isolation. Like, I don't know, maybe it's because he spent the last 2 years mostly doing individual work, but like he was like dribbling, over dribbling at times.
Right.
Maybe Draymond wasn't there either, which might add to it. But
was it 11 dribbles in the famous 60-point game? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, you kind of wonder if you spend a lot of time, and John, you probably have the best outlook on this front. Like if you spend a ton of time, not only rehabbing, but then rehabbing to a point where, and I wrote this, like, his people say he could have played in early December. You know what I mean? Like he's been ready for a while and they took their time. So if you're actually running and you're really playing, but you're playing with a bunch of guys who are below your level, I do feel like, that inevitably is going to lead to more ISO play, more dribbling, and more freelancing than you would if you're playing in Steve Kerr's system.
I don't really know what it's like to play with people who are below my level as a player. So I can't really relate to that.
Fair point.
He has definitely like mostly just done individual work though. I mean, that's all I've seen for the last couple of years when he's been on the court. I mean, besides,
I do spend a lot of time alone, so I can relate to that part.
We caught most of that. Your Wi-Fi wasn't liking your joke. It's still.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Did you say you spent a lot of time alone? That's what you can relate to?
Yeah.
Well, you don't spend that much time alone. You spend a lot of time with Nate Duncan. So the part of me that's just, I'm so happy to have you on this podcast because we all know that you and Nate do your thing on your pod.